Welcome to the LSI Behind the Wind podcast. I'm Sean Slatter. For 30 years, I've dedicated my life to the science of business development. I've seen the impact of our work, which has evolved into a lot of different elements of business development and now economic development and social impact. And today, for this episode, I have asked one of our senior executives in our Washington, D.C. office, Josh Johnson, to join me and talk about business development and how you interface with the Congress. There's this misconception with a lot of individuals in our industry and even new to our industry that how you capture new business is you need a good lobbyist. And so Josh has a 30-year career working with the U.S. Congress. He served for 10 years in the House and 10 years in the Senate, a very unique career that typically does not happen. So he's seen process and strategy in both the House and in the Senate. And then he's worked for us for the last 10 years as a senior executive on our team. So Josh, thanks for joining me. Maybe just talk a bit about your background and some of your time with LSI. And then we're going to talk about this issue because I really think this is a tough issue that we see with our clients and with business development strategy in general.
Great. Well, thanks for having me today.
Thanks.
I wanted to describe briefly who are the typical people who a lobbyist meets with or who works in the Congress. So often people see a person there and just assume that, that the job was put out there and many people applied for it and it's just someone to get to the member. Most of the time, that person is there because of a relationship that they had with the member or someone that they know had with the member or a person in that office. So these are positions, the people filling those slots have a unique relationship to get hired with that office that when you meet them, there is more than just, oh, this person was hired to do this. There is that unique relationship that they have. And that can be anything from an intern up to the chief of staff in an office. So I want to describe briefly the structure of how the Congress, works. And so
that's great.
What happens, both the House and the Senate have more or less the similar types of positions. You have in an office interns. You have in the office people that are called legislative correspondents, and they are the ones that are directly executing kind of the components of research that someone slightly senior than them needs. And that person is what they call legislative assistant. This is again in the personal office of a congressman or a senator. The role of that legislative assistant is to oversee certain portfolios. So you could be the person doing natural resources, you could be the person doing defense, a variety of different subjects. And they tend to have between 3 to 4 legislative assistants that are handling a variety of different things. Then you have in all offices a person that's the legislative director. That person is ensuring that issues associated with what the member is wanting to pursue has a strategy associated with it and that they can push through the initiative once it's identified as a priority. And then you have a press team, generally consists of 1, potentially 2 people that are messaging continually to get the word out in different ways. One's to constituents, one's to industry groups. They deal with a variety of different ways and who they're trying to angle and communicate to. And finally, the chief of staff position. Some of these folks have been with the member throughout many years, even before they came into the Congress, may not have had public policy experience, but are now doing the main person of conversation with the member about what they should do. So it's more of a advisor, friend, potentially also doing a variety of fundraiser related work as well. And each office has someone who's dedicated to being able to do fundraising. So I was never engaged on that side, but that's the typical makeup of the House and the Senate office. Then you have committees. And the committees they operate differently depending on what side you're on. The House side, a committee has quite a bit of power to be able to push through agendas. And in the end, it's majority rules in the House. So if you're in the minority in the House, good luck at getting anything through. There's not a lot of good treatment of the other side. And that's seen through the agendas that they're pushing in, and they apply a lot of muscle there. The leadership in the House to make sure that they get through what they want. Whenever you see something go to the House floor, they almost 99% know how it's going to go. So if it fails, they know it was going to fail and there was a reason, or it's successful because they knew it was going to go through. They don't put agendas through where they have no clue what the votes will be, and so that's a very important part of the House leadership, is making sure that if they put something forward, that they're really not embarrassed if they lose. They knew they were going to lose. The Senate, on the other hand, any one senator can slow the process. So it's very different than the House. There are rules, but in many cases, one senator can wreak havoc. Committees are operated quite a bit differently as well. You have a lot more established people in subject matter expertise on the committees. And I'm not saying the House doesn't care about policy, but the Senate definitely has this sense of, we want to make sure that if we're actually pushing something through, that it's just not a political advertisement, that even if it has politics around it, that it has substance tied to it. So the committees in the Senate operate slightly different than the House, but they still are ones forming and working with the members in the different groups and getting the legislation drafted, carried out. One last thing on that, what you will find is those people in those committee offices, 90 some odd percent of the legislation going through is done by them. So when you're sitting down with someone in the committee office who's over an energy portfolio or a defense portfolio dealing with shipbuilding, that person is the person in the Senate that is been charged on that committee to get that through. So every time that you're sitting down with someone on a committee over a portfolio that you care about, think of that person as the one that's writing the provisions, and that's going to carry what they care about through. It's not to say that the member doesn't have, interest in this, and they're always, the members, of course, are hearing from a variety of people and telling their staff, we need to accommodate this. So that's in a nutshell, just the structure, Sean.
No, that was fantastic. And just some foundation and some background. I had mentioned that you had served for 10 years in the House and 10 years in the Senate. And you and I had known each other for a lot of years. I'd come to Washington, D.C. every month, which I've done for the last 30 years. And I'd come see you when you were both in the House and in the Senate. And you were explaining this to me that, listen, this is how the committees work. This is how a member office works. And you really helped me understand the importance of connecting with the right individuals and how overall legislative strategy works with the U.S. Congress. And I also was so impressed with your understanding of the state legislatures as well. And so for all of those years, I kept saying, why don't you leave the Congress and come to work for us? And you finally did. So there's a little background on our relationship. And Josh, you've worked for us now for almost 10 years. But talk about all of that time that you had served in the House and Senate and as the senior lead for some of these committees. So many times, probably weekly or in some cases daily, you were interfacing with constituents, with lobbyists, with company executives that were coming into your office and meeting with you and saying, we provide this commodity or service and we need help from the Congress in capturing new business with the U.S. government. I think that a lot of the executives in our industry have this idea that listen, if we're going to do business with the U.S. government, we've got to go to the Congress. They control business. So talk about your history during your time in the House and Senate, interfacing with lobbyists, with constituents, and with corporate executives, meeting with you, asking for business with the federal government.
So what's interesting I'll talk to two hands. Over the thousands of meetings over 20 years that I had, I can tell you less than 10 people that I would hire to pay actual money from my pocket to go work the Congress. And so that gives you a sense of what I see as the lay of the land of what people hiring these guys are getting. Now, there are a lot of people that came through without a lobbyist, and they just knew that, they came back for some meetings and they wanted to meet with the member, and they came in and they described very well why the member should care about what they're doing, and this is what they're asking. In many cases, the lobbyist doesn't even understand the client's issue. And so I would be in meetings in which they would bring in a lobbying firm. One person would come in with 3 senior executives, and they would talk about their issue. The lobbyist would spend 15, 20 minutes trying to, slap the back. Oh yeah, when I was up on the Hill, this and that, and our firm does this and that, and hey, how's this and that? And then he turned it over to she would turn it over to the executives, and they would tell, this is what we need and why, and how to do it. So once that meeting was made, and in many cases, I take the meeting, as a staff, because there was
out of courtesy.
interest. Yeah, out of courtesy. And so a lot of this can be done without the backing of the lobbyist. So I'll give you an example of what's happened, and where I see the problem that people think why they need Washington representation. A lot of these firms will say, hey, we can get you connected with the senior people in the administration and in the Congress, and we can get you before the member, and you can describe what you're doing. So we had a case in which a gentleman came in, was at the time the only company that could produce LED lighting. And they came in, the lobbyist brought these guys in, and they said, guys, we're messed over. After the long introduction by the lobbyist, the CEO said, we can't compete for this Department of Defense procurement. And then he went on to explain what his technology is, that they are producing it, and that they're the only LED provider of this technology in the United States. And the procurement had already been out on the street, had already gone through this process, and now they're coming to Congress to say, hey, we're messed over. And I remember looking at the lobbyist saying, why in the world are you coming to the Congress? What can I provide you at this point? Legislation? It may go through in a year, 2 years, 5 years that says all bulbs need, LED lighting needs to be produced first by a U.S. manufacturer. Or administratively, I could have gone to the Army or the Department of Defense and said, hey guys, we're, a year ago, 2 years ago, before this company came in and said, hey, we have a unique technology that competes with the Chinese, and you should learn about it. And we want to make sure that as you're looking at the requirements, that we don't get ousted out of the competition because of this. So they had the lobbyists, all that they were trying to do is say, hey, we're in trouble. This company that we represent needs help. Can you do something legislatively? Best case scenario legislatively is we call up the administration and say, that stinks what you did. There's companies that can do this. You got to fix this. So the next procurement or procurements later, they start thinking about it. But that doesn't need Congress to do that. No. That's the disconnect there, that so many people hire these folks. And to be honest with you, I would say that most of these retainers that a company or a city are paying range from $7,500 up to $50,000 plus
per month. Per month.
And you're getting on the lower end, maybe 4 to 5 hours of time that the person's thinking about. And it's generally when that client comes into town, and all they're doing is they are a glorified intern calling up, in the case of where I was sitting, me saying, hey, I got a client coming in, can you meet with them? And this is what they do. I say, yeah. So they spend, and they don't even do that. They have someone in their firm call me to do that. Then they come in without a real awareness, in many cases, of how Congress could really do anything. They might know the client. I'm not saying that they all don't know the client, but there is a complete disconnect on what they actually want is not what a lobbyist provides.
Right. So, and we're going to come back to this because I'm sure that when a lot of our friends and associates in the lobbying industry hear this, they're going to be upset. I mean, this is their business, and you and I have a lot of friends in this business of lobbying, and we're going to talk about how to effectively use your lobbyist. But I mean, setting this stage for these podcasts, we hear this so much, even with very mature companies that have really good legislative strategies and have been doing this for years, and it is their business. They still come to us and say, how do we connect with our delegates to capture this business? And if you're new to doing business with the federal government, that may be your thought. I've got representatives in the Congress. The Congress controls policy and appropriations for the federal government. I need to meet with my representatives, or I need to meet with the House committee for whatever my product or service is. So you saw that all the time when you were in the House and Senate. We continue to meet with clients, new and even existing clients, maybe new to the business, or even mature clients that have been doing this for a long time, and say, they have this thinking, I'm going to get business from the federal government through the Congress. So that's a myth. That's a myth that never happens. You will never get any business with the federal government through your relationships with the Congress, right? Okay, so dispelling that myth, what advice would you give to companies, to executives that representing these companies, and you said even to these lobbyists, what advice would you give them when they'd come in and see you and say, we manufacture this product, we want to do business with the federal government, we need your help in positioning our product or service with the federal government? What advice would you give them when you were working for the Congress?
What I would always do is kick back to say, guys, you're bringing me your business development strategy for penetrating the federal government, and you expect that one person is an elected official is now going to be your lead BD person, and that's not the case. You have most of the people that would come through the door, there was already authority for them to do what they're doing without Congress acting anymore. And in fact, in some cases, it made it worse by going to the Congress. And I'll give an example of companies who kept wanting the government it's another energy example. Companies came to the Congress saying, help us. We have this authority to do these retrofits to improve energy operations at bases, and the bases aren't coming to us. Can you put in some language that says you have to do this? So I was part of legislation on several fronts that basically said, government, if you're going to do put a new chiller in or some new windows in, you have to use these guys. Every time we did that, it would come back that it would cost a lot of money in order. What would happen is, and this is a nuance that people don't realize, when we're directing the government to do something, you're basically creating an obligation that has to be offset by something. So in this case, if we go to the government and we say, okay, guys, we want you to now purchase all these products, even though you can do it now, we're telling you have to do that. What happens is the government will come back, and there's a separate entity that tells Congress, if you enact this, it's going to cost $6 billion next year. Well, Congress then has to find $6 billion in order to move that legislation the way the rules are written. We have to find $6 billion to offset something that they could already do. It's so bad, but they're paying lobbyists to come try to help them with something they can already do administratively, and then Congress gets involved, and we even make it harder now for them to do work. And so from the standpoint of what I see is they think that they're going to get their BD handed to them and they're going to be directly written into a report saying company A is going to get this. It does happen. There's ways that certain companies are the only ones that can do certain things, et cetera. But that is such a small minority. That is a few percent where policy or these types of recommendations actually really carry enough ground. If they would just spend that $20,000 a month on a BD firm to go into the administration with
Right.
the expertise, subject matter experts already in the company doing it, such as LSI, they would have 20 grand more in their pocket, and they'd actually be producing results through that. So that's why I did not choose the route of lobbying, at least right after I left, because I was fed up with people needed BD help. They didn't need their BD help was not through a lobbyist. It was through firms that specialize in subject matter expertise with agencies and developing kind of the policy and requirements that then go into, as mentioned, the United States saying, this LED lighting compete for. Well, this LED lighting first and foremost should be companies that produce it in the United States, and then other companies. Simple fix that could have been done without coming to Congress saying, oh boy, we messed up.
So the myths of business development, there's a lot, and I think this is one of them. And I think it's the foundation that there are so many executives and practitioners in our industry that go into this thinking, okay, I have a great product or service. If I could just get the Congress to see how amazing this is, the Congress is going to give us the money and shape legislation and policy that will allow us to win business with the federal government. It's a myth. It's a myth. In your 30 years of doing this, in my 30 years of doing this, we have not seen any significant program that has emanated directly from the Congress. We're going to talk about how companies can use the Congress as part of their business development strategy. But that myth is that I'm going to go in, I'm going to talk to my representative in the Congress, and he or she is going to make it so that we win this business. Never happens. It will not happen. So I think that as you and I talked over a lot of years, when I would come to DC every month, and many times you and I would meet, and you would ask me what I'm doing, I'd ask you what you're doing, and we would compare notes. You're right. The things that I think made sense for you and for us is that we both shared this philosophy that these companies are wasting millions of dollars a year, billions of dollars a year, hiring lobbyists, thinking that is our business development strategy, and it's a waste of money. And when you left the Congress and joined LSI, and we started linking what LSI had done for years through capture and proposal development and the overall LSI methodology for winning new business, we started working with companies, linking their business development strategy to their congressional strategy, and even collaborating well with their either in-house or contracted lobbyists. So, I mean, talk about that. Like I said, I'm sure that when a lot of our friends hear our position on this, number one, I mean, if they really understand the Congress, the mechanics of the Congress, they know this is the truth. This is how the Congress works. If they're telling their clients, yeah, we'll help you win this business through our relationships with the Congress, they're probably misleading you, taking your money, and they know that it'll never happen. And if they think they can get you business through the Congress, they don't understand how the Congress works. But talk about you leaving the Congress and coming to work for LSI, and how we have for years effectively utilized a company's congressional in-house or contract lobbying firm, legislative strategist to help them win business?
I think what's interesting about this model is, let's assume we have a client that is paying us for their BD and it's a specific engagement, of which it looks like there's some crossover with the Congress, either on educating them or letting them be aware of what it is. It's so much easier for us to leverage the current contract we have and say, Josh, can you go work a few hours of this? So my time ends up being, in the hundreds, while if they were to go to a lobbying firm, they're getting in the thousands, and that firm doesn't really understand what they do or what does BD mean for a firm that wants to go after government contracts. It doesn't mean go to Congress, but there are times in which there is a need for Congress to be aware of it. So we have this on a variety of clients in which, as part of just their package of capture with us or BD, we will spend some time, educating the Congress about why they should care about this. And we do it several different ways. We do it directly that, look, this company is in this state, this member is on the House Armed Services Committee, this member is senior, and this member should care about what this group is doing in their state, in their district, and how it applies to what the administration's doing. Also, we do it just to get, in many cases, assistance from them to help research what is going on. So we will do this quite often with entities that have something that truly is unique, in which the Congress should be aware of this, but they should be aware of it by having a third party come in and say, Congress, there's something occurring in the Army that you should be aware of that's technology driven, and we want you to become aware of this. And we do that through relationships with the offices and relationships with what they call the Congressional Research Service that issues daily reports. The reports can be as simple as hypersonics and the role of heat challenges. Okay, so if I'm a company that works on issues associated with that, I can then further refine that report that has the CRS coming back saying, okay, there are ways to address this that are currently out there in the following manner. Oh, and it so happens there's one company or two companies that do this. So even though it's educating members about what's happening, and we're doing it in a way that's being solidified by a third-party entity that is providing, bipartisan information that members should care about.
So what you've done so well in helping companies work with our team, with members of our team, in creating good business development strategy is looking at, can we educate members and the committees on the importance of this, shaping policy, potentially appropriations, but a lot of times that appropriations is going to be rolled up into a larger bucket. And I mean, we could talk for a couple of hours just about appropriations, and I think we should at some time, because that is it's its own science that is imperative for capturing new business with the federal government or state government. Or you've got to have the funding, and it's its own unique science that we'll come back to in the future. But having a strategy on education, is there an opportunity to create policy and appropriation around that? Anything I'm missing there?
No, I think that's good. I do want to make a point about, again, some firms hire a lobbying firm because they have what they think is past performance in helping universities. So to give you an example of this past performance is because I work with 18 universities, this firm would be good because they've been hired by universities. If you want to have a firm that's giving you the same newsletter to 18 other people, the same things to the 18 other people, and they're charging you 15 grand to basically tell you what we're developing for our clients every day. Here's the pipeline of opportunities. Here's an overview of what's coming out and what we think's coming out. I just think, again, that these folks are hiring, firms to do stuff in which they're doing the least amount that they can to bring in the money. The second thing is, you're only as good as kind of the relationships that you have. So if I'm being hired to help a company promote LED lighting, but I'm hired because I know a member of Congress, it's pretty not very effective that you're hiring someone who doesn't understand lighting, but I have a relationship. So when that relationship's gone, I'm gone, but they hired me purely to get into that office. If it's a good idea and there's a company that does it, that member's going to take that meeting without someone paying 20 grand. And we do that all the time, helping people meet with the appropriate people who should care about what they're doing. And it's not a monthly retainer. And so I think that just getting over that and actually we're providing the subject matter expertise. So when they talk to the member or their staff, the staff who is an expert likely going to say, okay, tell me about your technology. And they're talking about it. They're not just messing around that because I know this person. If I have to talk when I go in with a client that has for more than a minute, I'm not doing my job. My minute is, hey, thanks for taking this. Let me turn it over to the subject matter expert to tell you about what's happening in your district or in your state or technology that you should care about because of what your boss's interest is. Boom. And that's where they're getting the bang for the buck of now an hour talking with a true subject matter expert, right, doing business development for an entity that knows what the end state is.
So this is the other thing that we see a lot is that an individual, even a high-level executive, they are enamored spending time with a member. I mean, you see this a lot, and you've seen this in your career that they hire a lobbyist or a public relations firm that has relationships with members, and they will get them a meeting with the member or have a lunch with them or something. And you see these individuals are just enamored with that. We also typically see at the end of that meeting, nothing happens afterwards. They have a meeting, they talk about it. The members and I think that members are genuinely interested in new ideas and what their constituents are doing. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but typically the meeting ends, the member and the staff go back to what's next, what's the next thing, and there's no progress. So if you had to give advice to a business development executive that comes to you and says, we're thinking about hiring a lobbying firm, or we have a lobbyist on retainer, what advice would you give to them?
So I would ask, just in general terms, what is their strategy and how it relates to what they're doing on the BD front? Because sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's different, and sometimes it might contradict. So I would get, if I'm working with a client where I know they have a DC-based firm, I would ask what they're doing and how can we align. Secondly, what I would do is I would leverage the bejeebers out of the lobbying firm. I would make these guys work more than 2 hours a month. I would say, hey, you guys have a lobbying firm? We, as the BD side of your office, this is the type of stuff that will be helpful if we're going to win this, capture this. We need to have the following things done. And by the way, can your lobbyist help this? And here are 6 or 7 things. And I put that test all the time because I get so frustrated with how much they're paying these guys to not do a lot that I'll actually give them a little worksheet saying, here are the 10 things that if you hire these guys to do this, this is what you should ask, how you should ask it, and what your follow-up is. And the lobbyists hate it because they're actually having to do more than the few hours a month, and they're having to provide a report that indicates it. Now, going to your question, Sean, let's say I want to have a photo op. I want to have lunch with a member. Okay, how much is that worth? Is paying someone $10,000 a month for $120,000 a year to go have a lunch one time? You could get a lunch for a lot less than $120,000 a year. And if you know what you're talking about, you're gonna be engaged. And so For those off places that really care about that, there's a whole line of business out there that is on the, has its own rules and regulations on fundraisers,
Yep.
on doing these types of events. Go hire one of those people, and it's
Right.
going to cost the team a lot less. So if they do have a CEO that is enamored by this, they're enamored by meeting important people. That the lobbying side is a lot of more money to pay than just a firm that specializes in, I can help get you a lunch with this person. And again, they all have rules behind them. So
That's right.
if lunch is put together and it's a certain amount that needs to be paid, it's all reported and everything, but they don't need to pay $120,000 to go see a member once a year because they want a photo op or feel like they're sitting down for dinner and giving them something good.
So if there is a need, and we do work with lobbyists, we do know some lobbyists that are very good, that understand the mechanics of the Congress, that understand how to develop, create, and pass new legislation and work policy. We know those individuals. And so if there is an interest and a company sees there is a path for business development tied to policy, appropriation, we can provide some guidance on who's good, who they should be working with, and then ultimately working with the real decision makers, the customer, what we call capture, to get new business, to capture new business. And so we can help with that legislative strategy, with using Congress as a tool. It's not going to be where the contract emanates, but to use Congress as a tool to your business development, and then developing the relationship with the true decision makers is really the key. So Josh, let me ask you one last thing as we wrap up. A lot has changed in interfacing with the Congress and staff since COVID. What do you see now? I mean, I think it's very interesting what has evolved post-COVID or through this pandemic. What do you see as the methodology of us interfacing with members and their staff?
I think it's just the directness of, here is what we need and why, and then you're likely going to be on a Zoom call. This idea of going into the office is not happening, and if it does, it's kind of rushed in a way that isn't helpful. And the idea that the evenings and lunches now you can go out and do, you can. I mean, but it's limited as well. That they have to so it's very different. But the Zoom calls are fabulous because you have that time to bring in from wherever in the country where previously you couldn't. Bring in the subject matter experts to talk to that staffer. They want to make sure that what they're putting forward to their boss actually is legitimate. And right. So it really is, for our standpoint in our business, it really is a blessing because we can bring in the person sitting in South Dakota who is an expert on ICBMs that normally wouldn't have the time to be able to fly to DC for 3 days of meetings that really they don't need to. And now in an hour, they can explain directly what's needed and how they're doing it. So it really has opened up a lot of our expertise and capabilities that previously was too expensive to either come in, or the meetings would get canceled after spending, trying to get there, for the week.
We saw that so many times, that these schedules are dynamic and there's a vote or there's not, and this got canceled and this got moved. We would see executives come in, spend thousands of dollars on travel, not to get the meeting even. So you're right. I think this has helped a lot. Josh, there's a lot of content that I am excited to explore with you. I mean, we came up with a lot of paths that we could explore in future episodes, which we will. I really appreciate you joining me on this episode, and look forward to some future discussions as we talk about how companies, their business development teams can effectively increase their win rates and reduce their business development costs. This is key. This is really this myth of I'm going to spend money on a lobbyist and they're going to get me new business is a great place to start. And I think this has been a fantastic episode. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, look forward to additional conversations.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. So Josh, as I said, has been working with the Congress for the past 30 years, both the House and the Senate, and even the administration, a lot of the cabinet members. He and his team, our team in Washington, D.C., are doing amazing things. They're interfacing with the Congress and professional staff on a daily basis. And really, there's no one better to help organizations interested in business development and believe that they have a need to use Congress. I mean, Josh really is the world's leading subject matter expert in this area. So as we conclude, if you're interested in learning more about this episode or LSI, please reach us at social@lsiwins.com, SOCIAL @LSIWINS.com, and we'll have somebody connect with you quickly. Josh, thanks again, and look forward to future episodes with you.
Thank you.